Have you been wondering if speaking actually would be a great way for you to market your business? Well, today I am bringing on a friend of mine. Her name is Frenchie, and she is going to be sharing how just last year she started doing a lot of speaking and what she noticed in her business and also personally. So let's bring her on. Frenchie, thank you so much for joining me this morning on my podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here. I always love to see you and chat with you.
It's fun, and it's been a little while since I was on your podcast. So can you just give my audience just like the Cliff Notes version of who you are?
Who am I? What a question. But for the purposes of this conversation, I'm a business strategist and advisor, and I'm really focused on helping people do the right work at the right time so that they can get the results that they want to grow their reach, revenue, and renown.
I really like that. Do the right work at the right time. And before we jump into that, I personally know that you have done some speaking and want to do
Hmm.
more speaking because you have
Yes.
a beautiful, beautiful message that more people need to hear about. And you're also hosting your own events. So this is part of the reason why I wanted to bring you on to my podcast is really to show people like evidence of what speaking can do. So can we
Hmm.
go back to when you were doing a lot of speaking?
Yeah, absolutely. So rewind back in time, I'm trying to think when it was. I think it was 2023 was kind of the year that I had monthly or twice a month speaking engagements. And some were live speaking at masterminds, some were virtual engagements, really running the gamut in terms of what they looked like. And I say that because I think that in my mind, I was always like, speaking is only speaking if I'm standing on a stage and everybody's staring at me, which is one version of it, but there's a lot of different iterations of it. And 2023 was my best year in business. And I'm not surprised that the two were happening at the same time. And what I really experienced from speaking was one, finding my voice in a different way. But then because I'm a strategist and I'm always trying to break things down, I was like, well, this is also one, getting me in front of potential clients. Great. Two, creating a really massive halo effect around the fact that I am speaking. So it gave me a lot of content to write about, and it was really strong credibility building content. And then that credibility attracted more people in. And so speaking as a tool and as a marketing tool really set off a beautiful flywheel effect for me that is now one of my core goals in business overall. And actually, this year, in the later half of this year, I was like, I need to get back into that and have been really focused on doing more of that again because I saw how impactful it was for my business and also how much joy it brought me.
Yeah, yes. Oh my god, you are just making my heart sing with all of that you just said about speaking. But what provoked you to start speaking in 2023?
I think I just wanted to. I mean, I know that sounds a little bit like I think that I got to a point where I was like, I'm not really I like to do digital marketing, but I don't want to be just a forever digital marketer. I like to be around people or connecting with people. It's not like sometimes I once said this, but social media can feel like you're speaking to a room full of ghosts, and speaking feels like you're speaking to a room full of people. And I would rather speak to a room full of people.
Yes. Me too. Me too. I mean, connection is one of my highest values. So being
Hmm.
able to be in the room with people and building those relationships is like just magic for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so no fear of speaking. You just got up there and said, "Okay, let me do this."
Well, it's no fear, I would say. It certainly wasn't no fear. I think that I'm trying to think about how it really kicked off. Oh, I'll be very really specific here because this just popped into my mind. I applied to speak at a conference called Mom 2.0 in the summer of 2022, and I didn't hear anything until January 2023. And then I was like, well, I guess I'm going to Arizona to speak at this conference. Like, it was kind of just one of those things. And I was really nervous, but I was like, okay, this is a smaller round table. I can do this. And, I can't say that I have crazy anxiety around speaking. It was still, just normal nerves. But
Mhm.
then the moment that I started posting about the fact that I was even going to speak there, I started getting a really positive feedback loop, right? Like it was before the thing even happened. And, what was interesting is that this conference has a lot of speakers. So it wasn't even like I was a keynote speaker or, you know, but it did just have so much, it gave me something exciting to talk about, like I said. And that kind of set it off. And then I got a couple invitations from other people, and then I applied to more things. And then it just kind of created this virtuous cycle that, actually was kind of bookended by me hosting my own event in New York with all of it, which I also know we wanted to talk about.
Wow. All right. Okay. So I'm trying to say like two things at once here. I believe that speaking, like, easily snowballs. So you
Yep,
spoke at one event, and then you got lots of invitations to, like, "Hey, we'd like you to come speak at my group, my event, my
yep,
mastermind." And, like, from each of those, it's like, "Hey, where can I" I talk about this post-event process.
yep,
Who else do you know that would benefit from having me speak and share this story, share my message, share my lessons,
yep.
with? And yeah, and people are so willing to say, "Oh, yeah, I know a few people," because I just think that speaking hosts know speaking hosts.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so how did you and because I think my audience would be very interested, like, what was the thing that you were offering the audience at the end?
Mm. So it kind of ranged. And I was really strategic about this in every single thing to make sure that there was an opportunity. So at this conference that I spoke at, I didn't have a screen or anything like that. It was a round table, it was smaller. And so I was really old school, and I just told everyone, pass my computer around this circle of people, drop in your email, and then I'll send you a follow up to, book a call with me. So that was like a stay close to the money call with me. But what I was really, really intentional about was like, I'm not going to lose this opportunity to capture these conversations with people,
Mhm.
whether it was for more speaking opportunities or for clients or so on and so forth. So there was that. The other thing that I have done, or that I did along the way, in the other talks where I did have slides and that sort of thing, was I actually would weave my lead magnets into my presentation throughout. And typically it would be like 1 to 2 lead magnets. And I'd be like, okay, we have a limited amount of time here to really get into staying close to the money. But if you want to discover 37 ways to do it, just QR code, download this guide, and then you'll have everything you need and we can keep going. So I really focused on planting that into the conversation, knowing and trusting that on the back end, I have the systems and nurture strategy in place to then continue the conversation with those folks. So that was really important to me, is that I wasn't just like, I'm here and that's it, but that I was continuing through. And the mistake I made a couple times was that I would only wait until the end. But especially with virtual things, people hop off, people disappear. It's different than when you have people's rapt attention in a room. And so I started to plant things into my slides a little bit earlier on.
Very nice. You're just, like, speaking my language here. And I love how you didn't, learning that lesson about waiting to the end, because you're right, people on virtual events, they come, they go, but even an in-person event, you can have some people that they got an emergency phone call, they have to use the
Yeah.
bathroom, they're a speaker, and they have to go get ready for their event, so they're leaving early. So you're right, if you wait till the end
Yeah.
to mention your lead magnet versus planting those seeds throughout, because if I had
Yeah.
to leave your session early, I mean, like, I'm a smart woman. I can reach out to you and say, "You kept mentioning this. I'd love to," like, I wasn't there at the end to figure out, like, where is this link that I can sign up for it? So good for you for being really strategic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And have you
Um,
been able to track, like, the people, like, what the percentage of people, like, they booked calls
mhm.
and they became clients or they signed on for one of your programs?
I have not been very diligent about that. So that's my honest answer. And I think what's interesting is that sometimes it's hard because you go back a few degrees and you start to tease it apart. Meaning, one person who comes to mind, she never became a client, but she brought me onto her podcast, which then brought me in front of more people. But then I
Mhm.
don't necessarily know exactly who came directly from her podcast. So there's a little bit of threads getting lost.
Yeah.
Um, but what I have definitely seen shake out is that these opportunities beget more opportunities.
Yes. Yes. That's so like, I just feel like, can you just repeat that so that people like really hear that?
Yes.
It
These opportunities beget more
and
opportunities.
it's so true. It is so true. Um, I mean, obviously, like I'm such a huge fan of speaking, and this is exactly what I do with my clients is help them write amazing presentations and then deliver them, as their best form of marketing. But
Mhm.
let's I'm super curious about when did you start hosting? Because it sounds like your first event and then there was some other like you hosted an event. Was that in person or virtual?
So, I mean, I've hosted a lot of things. I'm a big believer in finding the balance between being on other people's stages, but also building your own stage can be a really powerful tool. So, actually, I was maybe 3 months into my business when I hosted a mini summit. It was all on Instagram Live and that sort of thing. But I just was like, I need a boost to my audience and I felt like I needed to actually create a little bit more credibility around my business overall. And so I did that. And then I've hosted a lot of workshops and masterclasses, which are well, they are speaking. I mean, they're different in, again, that perception of like speaking is on stage with thousands of people. So I've always kind of had this cadence of speaking, but of kind of hosting events. My background pre this business has always been like deep in the events world. And I used to produce events for like thousands and thousands of people as part of my jobs, right? I wasn't doing just events, but often these big events were a piece of it. And so I kind of have this event hosting background that is a through line for me. And so after doing a lot of virtual events, and then it was 2023, it felt like that moment where people were really ready to go back to in person. I co hosted an in person event in New York City. It was a 2 day publicity mastermind retreat with my friend Adela.
Fantastic. I had no idea about your background. And here it is, like in the back of my mind. I was like, can I ask her how long she's been in business? At this point in the conversation, like it was always like, I should have asked that in the beginning.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways,
Well, no, I mean, this business has been 4 years, but it came after 10 years working in startups in the like experience events and programming space.
all right. So, what I really like about this is that you came from something, a career where you were creating events, you were part of events. So, it's almost like events was just in your blood.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so
it
you just kind of
totally has
continued
been.
it with your own business.
Yeah,
Good for you. So, tell us about that first in person event that you co hosted with Adela, who's also been on the podcast.
I love it. I love it. So we co-hosted an event called Media Genius in New York City, and it was really designed to help high achieving business women to really establish their PR strategies and to
Mhm.
give them insights into how journalists think and work so that they could go out there, pitch themselves more, and spread their message more. And so we set it up where we had a mix of Adela and I presenting as well as experts presenting, which was really a nice balance of it. But Adele and I were kind of emceeing the event, right? Which was a new take on speaking for me, but also really fun. It's like, how do we keep the energy up? How do we corral people? And that event I think had about 20 people at it. So it was a small, intimate event. It wasn't a massive thing. But it was really high touch and high connection and high value for the people who were there.
Fantastic. So, what was the next step after that?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to remember. Um, I think that similarly after that event, it was like some people were focused more on I need the PR strategy exclusively. And so then that was really working with Adela. And then for me, it was people who were still feeling potentially a little bit lost about where they needed to prioritize in their business overall. Right. And so what I'm always helping people do is untangle all the thoughts and ideas that are running around in their brains, and then turn that into a strategy and turn that strategy into action. And so after that, I think again, I invited people to have a follow up conversation with me. I think I gifted everybody a strategy session. so that we could get into their business at a larger level, right? Really, from the perspective of this event was about one part of your business, but we all know that our businesses are multifaceted. So, how can we explore the nuance that you are currently in and then create more of a personalized plan for you? So that was a really nice kind of way to wrap it up. And one thing that I really love, and I do this often, is I know it's really high touch and, not always quote unquote scalable, but I really love being able to provide that kind of high touch connection after an event because what I often a gap for people is integration between what they learn at the event and then their day-to-day business and life. And so if I can be the bridge between taking everything that excited you so much during the event and actually doing it, I'm like, this is good.
That's awesome. So I think what I want to clarify for the audience is that you can find somebody to co-host an event with
Mhm.
who's not necessarily doing the same thing, but something that, like you were able to help certain people in the audience who may not have like I'm not ready for the PR stuff. That's a nice synergy with two speakers and, as you
Mhm.
put it, like you both were emceeing the event.
Right.
I want to go back to something that you said in the beginning was about as you started speaking, you found your voice.
Yeah.
I think that's really important for a lot of people to hear about. Can you share with me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Yes. So I have a bad habit of feeling like I need to be complete to do something. I need to be the perfect speaker. I need to have established my voice. I need to know exactly what I want to say or exactly how I need to sound, right? Like I have this habit of kind of feeling like I need to be at the end in order to start, which is when you say it out loud makes absolutely no sense. But that is like deep within me. And so what I was reminded in this process and what I keep being reminded in this process of speaking is that it's a process. And every speaker, professional speaker who I've met says they cringe when they watch some of their early talks, right? They just hate it. But that is how we learn. And what I noticed over time is that I started to take more ownership over my voice. I sometimes started off feeling like I needed to be really buttoned up and have it together. But my way of showing up in spaces is a little bit casual and a little bit funny and a little bit more self-deprecating at times in a way that I think is relatable. And I think that actually practicing and going through the motions and being in front of people allowed me to explore that space. Um, and it's still very much a work in progress, but I think it's an ongoing process that I want to be part of. And I want to give myself that ongoing space to keep exploring it.
Wow, that is so true. And there's a reason why I leave my very first Facebook Live up for people. And this is,
Mm,
like that live was after being on stages for years and being like a paid professional speaker. And my first Facebook Live is like, I'm like flat. There is no personality. I am like delivering the news. You know?
that's so funny.
And I leave it up because I tell people like, go watch that and
Right.
then come and see a more recent, like, Instagram story or some other video that I'm creating. There's such a difference. I've even
Mhm.
had, like, fellow professional speakers say to me, like, "I haven't seen you speak in years. You have gotten so good."
I
Because it's
love that.
about doing the reps. But I
Yeah.
was like you. I spoke in leadership. I wore the suit and the high heels on stage and always felt like I had to be perfect.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people wouldn't take me serious, but my personality is a lot like yours. I wanna show up as very casual. I wanna have
Yep.
fun with my audience because I want them to like, I wanna be relatable to them. I want them to
Yeah.
feel like, "Oh, if she can do that, I can do that."
Mhm.
I wanna be that kind of inspiration. I also believe that, we all have our own speaking style, and you
Mhm.
found yours.
Wow, it's we're it's like peeling back the onion. I think that I found pieces of it and I think that there's areas that I still want to keep working on and I think that's the fun, but it feels uncomfortable to say this, but you kind of need to keep working on it on a stage or
Yeah.
stage again, using that word generally.
Yes, yes. It's about doing the reps, just getting up there and speaking and saying yes to those events, and you just get better and better and better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And I'm just going to say one thing is that for whatever reason, when I first started, I was like, if I don't want to be a speaker because I never want to have to hop on, like walk on stage dancing and getting everyone in the audience to dance. You know what I mean? And there's people who do that and that's their vibe and that's their energy and that's great for them. And it is less great for me and who I am. And I think untangling some of the things that we see in the world and being like, what's my version of that? Right? Like, what is the way that I can make a grand entrance if I want to make a grand entrance or just show up? I saw this very well known psychologist speak back in April. Her name's Esther Perel. She does like, she's a relationship therapist. And she walked on stage holding a notebook and it was like silent, you know? And that was how she came on. And I was like, oh, yes, like everybody can do this their way. And so can I. And I think that was really, really comforting.
That's wonderful. That's a great example, and I can see her doing that. I've never seen her speak. I've just listened to her podcast. I've listened to other interviews that she's had. Yeah, she's one of those people who I feel like she could just pull up a bar stool and just start answering questions from the audience, and it would
Totally.
still be like the audience would still be very captivated. You
Yeah.
know, even without, like, a planned speech. But, yeah, you can come on any way that you want and whatever matches your personality. I've come on stage from walking from the back of the room because it
Mm,
matched what I was gonna talk about, and I
yeah.
remember, like, and sometimes I do things spur of the moment. It's like, "This is what I wanna do. This is what's gonna be perfect." Because sometimes you just, like, you sense the energy of the audience.
Mhm.
Oh, good for you. I'm so glad that you're speaking.
Thanks.
It just makes my heart sing. But also because you have so much to share with people.
Thank you.
So talk about what you do a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I am, like I said, I'm a strategist and I'm really on a mission to help people take action on the goals that they have in the back of their mind. And a lot of times these are the goals that we're scared to say out loud, that we're scared to give voice to. And that part of the reason that we're so fearful is because it feels big and complex and overwhelming. And it's like a little bit like speaking where you're like, well, where do I even start? It's like someone wants to build a personal brand. They're like, where do I even start? If somebody wants to start consulting, where do I even start? And I I really aim to bring simplicity to ideas that feel complex so that then with that simplicity and clarity, you can take action. Action drives momentum and momentum gets you the outcomes and the results that you want. But I keep seeing people have a dream to put themselves out there in a new way and not do it. And it kind of breaks my heart in a really big way. And if I can just be the person that helps people overcome that and actually make that progress towards what they want, um, that's like my high level vision and mission. And then the way that that shows up most of the time is working with a lot of business owners who are in their heads and who are just they've maybe they've started, they're getting it done, but they want more. And they are trying to figure out how to get to that more. And so that's where I come in with the strategy and the support to help them achieve that. Um, so yeah, and I think that in terms of the larger message, right? When I think about speaking and when I think about how speaking ties into all of this, the more people have tool permission and tools to take action that get them what they want, that stop them from holding back on what they're pursuing, I think the happier the world will be. And I think that's the message that I really want to speak to from the stage. And so I I think the more and that's really what lights me up. And like with so many things, it starts with a little bit of a personal story, which is that I was working in startups for a really long time and I was so enraptured with my startup experience. And I gave so much of myself and so much of my identity to those roles. And I'm glad I did. But I always felt like something was missing. I was like, where's the me here? Where is my voice in all of this? Am I just an employee of XYZ company or am I Frenchie Ferenzi? And eventually, when I got laid off from my job in 2020, I was like, I have all these dreams and these hopes and these ambitions. I've always been my job. Now what? And I was like, well, now is when I become Frenchie Ferenzi. And I really started investing in that and investing in my vision to run my own business, which is what I've now been doing for 4 years. And so, yes, it's about the business strategy and it's about goals and action and all that. But it's also about, more importantly, building the thing that is yours, that is entirely yours, that is speaking to a core desire that you've always had and actually bringing that desire to life.
Wow, that was amazing.
Thank
Like,
you.
that's like, I wanna come see you speak, and one of these days, I will,
I would love that.
because we all do what we're good at, and, you being you and sharing that message is what more people need to hear. Because 'cause you're right, it would be a much more beautiful world.
Yeah. And it
So
doesn't need to be all one thing. I think sometimes
mm,
the fear around entrepreneurship is like, I need to give up everything I have. I'm like, no, let's chip away at the thing that we're not doing that we have that desire around.
nice. Will you
Yeah.
tell people where they can find you, follow you, and
Yes.
learn more from you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Frenchie Ferenzi. I also suggest that you sign up for my newsletter. In there, I send weekly accountability check ins where I ask you a few questions to help you do the right work at the right time around whatever your big goal is. And it's really conversational and supportive. And it's really about making sure that we are all taking action towards the things that we want. So definitely sign up for that. And I will chat with you more there.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, and all of those links, if you're wondering, will be all down in the show notes.
Thank you.
So, wow, did Frenchie not deliver and share a lot of her experience with what speaking has done for her, like both for her business, but even just personally, being able to find her voice and understanding that you don't have to be perfect. That is something that, I've shared with you and have demonstrated also because, again, go watch that Facebook Live if you want to see what even a professional speaker, like trying to use a new modality and that happened when I came into the online world. And until next week, I want you to be in demand.